Hello, I'm Oscar Gonzalez. I'm the former coach and athletic director from the Hillsborough County School District, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Hello, Tampa Bay, and welcome to the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk. I'm your host, Coach Chuck White, and as my guest today is Coach Oscar Gonzalez, a man who's done a lot of things in sports, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this show because I too will enjoy hearing him talk about the many different hats that he's worn through his sports career. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Coach Oscar Gonzalez, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure, Coach, always.
I know that you had so many days of athletics as a player, as a coach, and as an athletic director. Well, let's just look back and start from day one. Why don't you tell the many listening audience here where you were born and something about your early childhood or your family?
Well, I was born in Matanza, Cuba. Came over very young with my parents. Settled here in Tampa, and started really as a young man or a young kid, Broward Playground, where I started my, I would call street ball and youth playing in the fields there, and played what they call flag football and play RYL baseball for them.
Most kids start out playing in the schoolyards, the playgrounds, correct. And it's not with organized team, it's just little pickup games, what they call sandlot. Was correct. That some of your experience?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we did at Broward. Mrs. White, she was a fine lady there. And,
not related, huh?
No, she kept us organized, wonderful lady, and we were just kids that played a lot of sandball, no doubt about it. And it was wonderful, wonderful time of my life.
Well, eventually you moved up to some organized team, I'm sure. So what was your first organized team?
I went to Little League at Riverside Little League. We really started it there. Played for the Browns, played for my father. It's like most parents were very much involved. Eventually, there it was Joe Voskursian, who really was very instrumental in coaching me in baseball and knew a great deal about baseball and helped me a lot. And then from there, played with some really fine young men. David Fife, who went and played high school baseball, drafted by the Dodgers. It was a young man. Then after that, we had Steve Garvey, and we played against each other. And then also at Chamberlain High School, where he also played. And so very fortunate. Then they had Andy Owens, who went to play for University of Florida. He was a great basketball player, but he was one of our pitchers also. So had a contrast of the number of ball players that went on, played different sports like I played football and baseball.
That name rings a bell with me, Andy Owens, but I thought of the Andy Owens was a great basketball player with the
Unbelievable.
Is that the same guy?
Yes, sir. He holds the record for the SEC in scoring still.
Wow.
Went on to play with the New Orleans Jazz, but as a kid, he was a heck of a pitcher. He really was.
I understand you played with the Miami team.
Well, I was very fortunate when I played high school football at Hillsborough under Bernie Wilson and Billy Turner. Was able to acquire an athletic scholarship to play football and baseball at Miami. Just strictly state football when I got there, and was able to play with some very fine players. Pete Banaszak, Ted Hendricks, Chuck Foreman, Silky Sullivan, Tom Sullivan, Burgess Owens, Ed Wazakowski. All these guys went and played in the NFL, and a couple of them are in the Hall of Fame right now, Football Hall of Fame. So I was very blessed and very fortunate to have made that transition and be able to have met these men.
Well, there was a guy who played with Miami, many people know and many of them don't know. They call him the Rock in professional wrestling, a great
Correct.
wrestler. I think his last name was Johnson.
Correct. He was a little behind me, but he comes by the university quite a bit still. And we run into each other a few times down at the university as a lot of our gatherings that we have down there. And he also has been very instrumental in contributing to the athletic program down there. Yes, he has.
Well, after playing high school sports, football, baseball, then you went to college, football and baseball, and you came into Tampa area. What possessed you to want to be a coach?
Well, I was very blessed that I played for a fine man, Charlie Tate, University of Miami. Also, Fran Kersey was my wide receiver coach at University of Miami. And and with Billy Turner was very instrumental also in help, because I really had got attached to him as a high school kid and really loved the way he handled young men. And it was just something that I loved to compete. I wanted to give back and be able to guide and direct young men that, like I was fortunate enough to get an athletic scholarship and be able to get an education free. So I earned it, but again, I wanted to be able to help and assist young men to get to that level. And it's just part of me. And it was ingrained in me.
And two, you wanted to stay around something you love,
Correct.
sports. So
yes, sir. I love it.
that's the way you came up. Can you talk about where you first coached or what team you first coached?
Well, when I left the University of Miami, Billy Turner was very kind to me and hired me on his staff, and so did Bernie Wilson. He was the athletic director, and I came on as the assistant football varsity coach and the head baseball coach at Hillsborough. Very green. I was as green as they come. Very inexperienced, and I was very blessed that I had some people guide me and direct me. And Hillsborough was my high school that I graduated from, and I just loved being at Hillsborough and being in the hallways there. So I was very, very fortunate to come back to my old high school and stomping grounds.
Can you think of some of the players that you coached?
Again, I was very fortunate there. I had Ricky Puig. He was the highest draft pick in Hillsborough County. He was 16th pick in the nation from Hillsborough until Doc Gooden came around, also a Hillsborough guy. I also had Mike Heath. Ricky went to the New York Mets and played second base for them in the bigs. Had Mike Heath, went on for the New York Yankees, and he played in the Yankee organization, played 13 years in the big leagues. And eventually they were very, very, very successful. Had some young men also, which I like to say that I was very fortunate that I was able to bring in, or I saw the talent in first young men of color to play at Hillsborough was Donnie Williams and Fig Newton. They were right-hander and left-handed pitcher, and that was the first time ever at Hillsborough High School that they had young men of color playing. And I was, not that I was looking for that, but they were that talented. And
Well, when you say Fig Newton, I'm thinking of something like something you eat, Fig Newtons.
You know, it's amazing, and I never knew Fig's first name. All the kids have called him Fig. I knew Newton was his last name, and it was a funny story. Quickly, when I was playing senior men's baseball, here I was facing this young man pitching, and I hadn't seen for 30 years, and it was Fig Newton pitching against me, and it was unusual, no, but he was a fine young man. Fine young man. And so was Donnie Williams. Donnie Williams was a tremendous little pitcher. He went on to play at HCC on scholarship.
You've been around sports for so long, and as you look back, I know there's some things that you like to really reminisce with. If you have homecoming or when you go to these places, you guys talk about certain things. Talk about some of the real good things that happened to you as a coach that you may say you were very fortunate to have had those things happen that didn't happen to other coaches.
Well, you know, Coach, I probably couldn't touch on to the things that you've accomplished in your career. I know. I was just again, as a young man, I was very fortunate, again, as a baseball coach that when in 1976, I was the head baseball coach at Brandon and took the first Brandon team to the state. We were the first one. Brandon's first time ever going to state in baseball, that is. And I look back and I have to go back a little bit with Billy Reed at Hillsborough, which is a very dear and personal friend of mine, and yours too.
Yes.
And think the world of Billy. And if I would have stayed there, I'd have inherited Doc Gooden and Sheffield and all those other guys.
God, yeah.
And I said, you son of a gun, you got it, and you got them all. But no, it couldn't have come to a better guy. It could have never happened to a better person than Billy Reed. It truly isn't. But going back, that's what I'd say would have been a highlight when I was at Brandon, to be able to take that team. And usually my best team was my Hillsborough High School team. I was just too inexperienced at the particular time, even though we only lost 3 games the entire season. But as you well know, every little move makes a difference, and I guess I wasn't mature enough to understand that.
You know, you mentioned a name that everybody seemed to know and to like, Coach Billy Reed. Here's a guy who coached Doc Gooden. Here's a guy who coached Gary Sheffield,
Right.
Vance Lovelace, Kiki Jones, and many, many
Yeoman.
others. Floyd Yeoman. And Billy today is one of my, I won't say one of them, he's my best friend. I talk with Billy almost every day. And we call him the catfish. Did you know that?
Well, after I learned that from you, and we ran into the grocery store, you and I did, yes. Yeah. And that's what I call him now, is catfish.
Catfish. And before he got injured and everything, I used to kid him. I say, man, the guy called me and say, when last have you seen the catfish? I said, well, I went over and looked over there in that catfish pool, and they said they had moved him out of the pool with the catfish and put him over in the place where the whales were. So they say
Well,
he had picked up a lot of weight, but he's lost now.
He's lost a lot of weight.
But he take that as a joke because he and I came up and we love each other just like brothers.
Absolutely.
Everybody has something that almost wanted to turn them away from what they were doing. Weren't there some days that happened to you that you wished hadn't happened?
Well, I could say I've been very, very fortunate and blessed again that I've had a few. There's no question, we all have. I think one that comes to mind is that I wish I could do overdid. I had a young man that he played for me, and I had disciplined him, and I think I went a little too far as far as disciplining him. And I kind of look back on my career, and I wish that I would have had more maturity and more tolerance to be able to have dealt with that situation much better than what I did. And that just comes with life experiences. And but that's one that really sticks. The rest of the time, I've been very fortunate as a coach. I've had some fine young men and people that I've worked for. So I don't have too many negatives that I can fall back on.
Well, Coach, let's just look back and say, what team, if you had to pick one, was the best team that you ever coached?
My first year at Hillsborough coaching compared to with my 1976 Brandon team.
Yes.
Very, very talented young men on both of them. And my Chamberlain team, which one I had in 78, but they were very young and very talented because 2 of those young men went on to play in the big leagues baseball. And David Miley, who played for me, became the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. But my Hillsborough and Brandon team those young men were very talented. We just were a little bit more successful at Brandon. That was a very successful, good group of young men, just like at Hillsborough, but we just gelled at the right time and took off, and we had a tremendous year that year. And on to the state. We just got a little bit unlucky at the end of at the state tournament. Like anything else, when the cream rises to the top, we made a couple of mistakes, and it cost us the state championship. But there can only be one winner, so we just didn't make it well enough that day. But I had some good, fine young men that went on on that team, and some of them went to to play in the pros. Yes, they did. So very fortunate.
Coach, as you coach through the years, sometimes you look at the opposition and you see some coaches and you might want to idolize them or wish you could do some of the things that they were doing. Did you ever look at any of the coaches, maybe not the coaches you coach against, some of the coaches maybe around the state that you know? Who were some of the coaches you always looked at as a top coach other than Billy Reed?
You got that one right. Billy Reed is an amazing young man.
Pop Cuesta.
Pop was an amazing one also. Frank Permew was a fine one. Then I had a very fine assistant and eventually became a very excellent head coach, and that's Jim Macaluso.
Oh, yes.
Ron Frazier, when I played at the University of Miami, he just built the university where he's a Hall of Fame coach today. He led the University of Miami to more national titles that have been had, and they set records as far as going to the World Series, I think more than any university has at this time still. Not 100%, but I think they are. And Ron was someone that I admired a great deal as far as it was coaching in a sense. And then I used to look a lot and analyze, for an example, even managing was Lou Piniella. I thought Lou Piniella did a tremendous job in managing, along with Tony La Russa, both Tampa products, which were outstanding. Yes, sir. And so not that I mimic them, but I try to take from each one of them the knowledge that I saw how they did and how they handled the game.
All the days of coaching, then your day came to an end or whatever. How did you happen to venture into the administrative part of coaching, such as the athletic director?
Well, before I hit that spot, I just want to mention that during my career also, I coached against Wade Boggs from Plant.
Okay.
And as you know where Wade did, and Wade played for a personal friend of mine, which was David Fife. Mm-hmm. We were kids together, and he also coached at Plant, and then eventually he went to administration like myself. Well, I've always wanted to be a part of the game. There comes a point that you got to kind of sit back and let some of the younger men come into it, and I felt it was time for me to move on. Went into administration because it really interests me a great deal to be able to see if I could build something besides just one team, if I could build an athletic department. So went through the steps of trying to get there. Took a while. Went to Tampa Bay Tech, went to Buchanan first as assistant principal, then eventually went to Tampa Bay Tech as the athletic director and assistant principal for administration, and ended my career at Lato, and tried to build as I went along, winning teams into tradition. Kind of tough, but that's just part of the game,
What are the duties of an athletic director?
Well, and let me say this to you, it's a little different in Hillsborough County because you're a assistant principal administration / athletic director. So you have a tremendous amount of responsibilities. As the assistant principal for administration, you're responsible for the entire facility, the students, transportation, feeding the students, upkeep of the entire campus, everything from point A to point B to point Z. Now, that being said, then you go to the athletics. You're in charge of all the coaches, as you well know, all the sports, the athletes themselves. Try to make sure they're eligible. Try to make sure they have the proper guidance by the guidance counselors, the coaches, to make sure they can keep their grades, stay eligible. Keep on top of that so you know that they can eventually be eligible to participate and play, and which is the main thing, is get a high school diploma. So I tell you, it's very difficult. It's just not strictly athletic director. No, there's just not. I mean, not here in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work to be able to and be organized a great deal to be able to do it. So then in case you've got so many, because we have basically around probably 18 sports, maybe even 20 now, because they may have added some other sports in since I've retired out of the system. And you're talking young men and young women. So then you have to make sure their transportation, make sure the uniforms, make sure they're getting properly fed, make sure they're eligible. So it encompasses a great deal. Booster club, make sure that they're also in tune what's happening with your school. So it's a lot of work, and it's young people that get into it, they think it's strictly just athletics, but it's not.
Many friends that I have who've been athletic director, they tell me about some of the things that happen that I wouldn't believe sometimes. Parents come in to see the athletic director about their child being suspended, their child, something happened to their child that they want undone that you can't undo. Can you relate to some of those things without calling names?
Oh, many times, many of them. And it's just something that I know their parents love their students a great deal, men or women, and that sometimes you have to be more realistic, about the problem. That's pretty difficult with parents. It just is. That's just their nature. They just want to make sure their child is successful, but along the way, everybody's got to be held accountable and responsible for their actions. So that's something you have to sit down and try to make sure that you can relate to them, and hopefully they'll understand it through your discussion with them.
Are there any training programs you see, you knew during the time you were involved in athletic? Well, let's say now you look back like camps or clinics or something, you think parents should make sure that their kid, maybe their girl or boys, get into?
Well, that's changed a great deal, and you're right, Coach. That's come a long way from when I first started coaching, and as a coach and as an athletic director. Camps have come in, and there are camps that are very beneficial, yeah, absolutely, and there are other camps that are just money makers. But that's where the parent has to do their homework and investigate what they want to achieve for their particular young man or woman to go into as far for their future. But yes, camps have been a tremendous thing as helping these young people to get ahead and get a step ahead of everybody else. So they didn't have that when I was a young person, like they didn't have when you did either.
Right. Are there such a thing now that kids can go to what, they used to have certain zones or areas where a person had to stay within. Now I understand a new rule just came out just recently, that a kid can go to any school he wants. Is that true? Or?
Well, that I know it was being discussed in the legislature, and that from understanding and talking to some other, that it had just been passed, that the situation you had where you had a lot of individuals, they were getting special assignments and they would go from one school to another depending upon subject area of what they wanted to offer for their child, and they could transfer to that school. Now, and it would cause such a tremendous amount of really confusion and headaches, because now you got to follow up and see, is that actually what's taking place? Are they really doing that? Well, now from understanding is because of they've got so much of that happening, they just placed a rule: a young person can go to whichever school they wanted to go as far as to participate in athletics. That's my understanding. They just got passed in the last month or month and a half.
You think this is going to open the door more on recruiting of coaches during the summer, that he can see a kid, if he can influence him to come to school, the kid will take off there? You think that'll, similar to me, I believe that's going to open the door for a lot to happen.
I don't think the door is open. The door's been open. It's going to open it wide open.
Yeah.
It's going to be two doors open, not one, and it's going to be almost impossible to monitor. Mm-hmm. It's going to be almost impossible as far as regarding who's recruiting, who's not recruiting. I mean, that's.
Coach, you've been through it all, and our time is just about to run out. Tell me, what is it you want people to say about Coach Oscar Gonzalez as a coach or an athletic director? What would you like to just hear? Just like we talked about Billy Reed, all the good things Billy Reed has done, the person he is. Just tell me what it is. I'll give you a good example. They asked me this question once. Coach White, what do you want people to say about you or do? I said, well, just let my work speak for me. Just let my work, the things that I've done, just let them speak for me.
Well, and I have to agree with that, Coach White. I just want to be known as a person that's always been fair, upright, forthright, honest. You can come see me. You may not like my answer all the time. Not saying I'm completely right all the time either, but I'll try to give you the best honest answer I have, and I will try to work with you the best of my knowledge. So I just want to always be known as that kind of a person that you could depend on, and he's willing to listen and do the right thing by you.
I don't think you could have said it any better, because that's just about all you can do. And I like the way you say you may not always agree with me, but you'll always feel good that you have done the right thing. That was my philosophy as a coach and as a game official or referee. I always I had a little prayer, and I asked God to help me to make the right decision, the right time, the right way. And regardless how people felt about it, let me feel that I have made the right decision.
Absolutely.
So, Coach, I want to say that it's been a pleasure having you here, and I know our listeners, our viewers have gotten very much from it, and I've gained a lot just listening to you as well as I thought I knew you. Thank you, Coach, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So that's it for the Tampa Bay Community Network Sports Talk Show. We hope you've enjoyed this show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. So be with us again on our next show right here on the Tampa Bay Community Network.